The wind swept hard against the broken fence line, pressing flat like a judgment it didn't care to explain. It hummed low, a sound like a hymn sung through gritted teeth. Snow didn't fall that day. It tore sideways, slashing the dry valley with grit and bitterness, dragging sorrow through the ribs of the land like something starving. And in that wind, tied with her own rope to a splintered rail outside the old feed barn, stood a woman. Her dress was faded gingham, the kind a girl might wear to Sunday supper, now soaked through and clinging to her like a second skin. Her boots were too thin for the weather, cracked and sagging. Her wrists were bound with knots too crude to be made by anyone kind. Red welts marked where she'd fought them earlier. But she wasn't fighting now. She stood still, chin level, shoulders braced, her dignity held tighter than the rope. Her name was Temperance Wade, 26, widow, cast off, dark hair slicked to her cheeks by sleet and wind, framed eyes the color of green steel sharp, stormed over and worn by truths she'd carried alone too long. She stared straight ahead, past barns and rooftops and time itself, the way people do when there's nothing left to lose. Down the road, the chapel bell tolled once. Midday. Most people passed without so much as a glance. A few stared long enough to feed their supper gossip. One small boy reached for her hand, innocent, unaware. His mother yanked him back like she might catch something from the woman. Shame moves quicker than fever and sticks longer. That morning, Pastor Quaid had turned her out, shoved her from his parlor with a stale loaf of bread she left behind on his step. "You bring judgment on every house you enter," he'd hissed, and then shut the door. So there she stood, staked like a warning, but her eyes were dry. She wouldn't cry for them. Only one soul stopped, Melba Fay, the town's laundress, with a mole like a second eye and a mouth full of truth no one asked for, crossed the street through the slush and muck with a shawl in her arms, and something softer in her gaze. "I can't untie you, girl," she murmured, wrapping the shawl around Temperance's shoulders with a reverence that stung more than comforted. "But I can see you." Temperance said nothing, just nodded once, acknowledging a flicker of grace in a place stripped clean of it. By dusk, the cold had turned cruel. Her dress clung like wet paper. She drew shallow breaths, conserving heat, heartbeats, and pride. That's when she heard them. Hoof beats, slow, heavy, purposeful. A wagon rounded the bend, pulled by a black mare, the only dark thing in a world bleached of color. The driver wore a long coat the color of dried blood. No hat, just black hair, whipped wild by the wind. Hay was stacked neat and square in the bed behind him. His face was weathered, carved with lines that didn't forgive. He slowed his team without being asked. Temperance watched him the way a coyote watches fire drawn, but too proud to plead. He didn't speak, didn't dismount, just looked at her. The mare pawed once at the snow, then, with a soft click of his tongue, he rode on. Her breath caught not with grief, but understanding. Men like him didn't get involved. Not here, in this town. Interfering made you part of the sin. But he returned. After supper, smoke had curled into the wind and windows, glowed soft with lantern light. He came back. No wagon this time, just him, on foot, boots crunching the frost. He stopped 3 paces from her, held her gaze while snow hissed sideways around them. "They said you did something wrong," he said finally. His voice was low and rough, like it hadn't been used in months. Temperance's mouth twitched dryly. "That's so. What was it?" "I breathed," she said. He was quiet a long while, then stepped forward, reaching for the rope. She tensed, ready for the sneer, the insult, the price men always asked. But his hands were steady, gentle. He didn't leer, didn't flinch. He untied her like she was something sacred. When the rope hit the snow, she looked him square in the eye. "If you undo this rope," she said, voice like flint, "you got to marry me." He paused, hands falling to his sides. No laughter, no scoff. Then he turned, walked back toward the wagon, disappeared into the dark. She didn't follow. Not right away. Not until he returned with a wool blanket and laid it around her shoulders like a vow. He didn't name. He pointed to the empty bench. Beside him, she climbed aboard. They rode in silence through the snow, the town falling away behind them. Stars blinked above like they hadn't seen such a thing in years. She didn't ask his name. He didn't offer it. "Thank you," she whispered. "You said I had to marry you," he replied. Not a joke, not a promise, just truth. A smile small and long buried touched her lips. His cabin sat near the pine ridge where the sky leaned in close and the world felt less sharp. He helped her down, never touching her skin. The wind had softened there. The air smelled like cedar and earth and wood smoke. Inside, the fire burned small but steady. The space was clean, almost too clean, like no one truly lived there. A table, 2 chairs, a faded photograph of a woman holding a baby, their faces caught in the stillness of duty, not joy. He lit a lamp. She pulled off her boots. That night, she slept on a cot near the fire. He didn't take the bed, just sat near the door, coat on, eyes open. The rope she'd been tied with lay coiled near the hearth. In the dark, she asked, "Why'd you come back?" Took him a while to answer. "Didn't feel right, leaving you." She nodded into her blanket. "Ain't been right in a while." The wind outside sighed through the trees like a mother too tired to weep. Morning brought frost-blurred windows and sun crawling low through the trees. She woke to find the blanket drawn tighter around her. Through the glass, she saw him splitting. Would each swing steady, each one a promise unspoken. She poured hot water into a second mug and laid it on the table. When he came in, cheeks pink from the cold, she said, "Name's Temperance." He nodded once. "Ira." They drank quietly, letting silence do what words couldn't. Later, they rode into town. No speeches, no explanations, just feed and flour. The chapel bell rang again as they passed. This time, no one tied her. But every eye followed her like smoke. In the general store, Melba said nothing, just tucked a spool of thread into Temperance's pocket when no one was looking. Eldon Pike stood near the grain barrels, smirking. "Thought you'd be halfway to Laram by now." He drawled. Ira didn't look at him, just dropped a silver coin on the counter and turned to Temperance. "You ready?" She nodded. "Always. Have been." This time, they walked shoulder to shoulder. When she glanced back at the chapel, the barn, the split rail where the rope had held her, it was like watching a ghost fade. The rope now rode in Ira's wagon, slack. She never asked why he kept it. He never explained. But sometimes she saw him sit on the porch beside it, eyes far away, as if measuring the weight of all a man could undo. The cabin didn't creak when they stepped inside. It breathed them in. Shadows curled beneath the table. The fire was cold. Ash. Temperance stood at the threshold, soaking in the space. Nothing was out of place, no smell of living. She stepped in. "I'll cook," she said, voice raw from wind. "You know where things are?" He asked, still at the stove. "I reckon I will." In the pantry, she found bacon wrapped in muslin, flour, salt, dried beans. Enough. She touched the rim of the pot, blackened but clean. Someone had once cared here. She didn't ask who. The first scent of bacon rose as Ira set 2 plates on the table. His sleeves were rolled, arms tanned and scarred. A man who worked alone. She stirred in silence. She'd cooked for men before. Men who hurt her. Men who used her. But this was different. She didn't feel watched. She felt seen. They ate without ceremony, just quiet chewing. Later, she washed the dishes. He stepped outside, looked long at the trees like they were holding secrets. That night, she laid out blankets near the hearth. He pulled a cot from a side room. She didn't take the bed. "I'll sleep here." "You sure?" "I am." The night deepened. He sat near the fire, boots off, eyes closed but wakeful. She stared at the flames. "You got folks?" she asked. "Had a brother?" He left. "Had a girl once." "She died." "She your wife?" "No, we were fixing to be." She nodded. "They say I was married to a criminal, like it made me one, too." "I don't care what they say." "You should. It gets loud." "I don't scare easy." She didn't reply. In the morning, he was reading a faded Bible, cup in hand. Coffee's hot. Food's warm. World's still spinning. She smiled. Faintly. "That's so." She explored the cabin, the barn, the patch of woods. "Worked without being asked. Wasn't expecting you to work," he said. "Wasn't expecting to sleep warm." She replied. Evenings passed. She sewed his torn shirts. He watched with something like gratitude. One night, she asked, "Why didn't you leave me tied?" "Didn't feel right." "You didn't ask what I did." "Didn't need to." What if I deserved it? You didn't. Snow melted slow out near the ridge. Life crept back quiet. She planted potatoes. He tended the fences. One day, she fell. He lifted her gently, carried her in like she was lighter than breath. That night, she whispered, "You ever been tied to a post, Ira?" "No, I have. It makes you feel smaller than your name." "Is that why you gave me yours?" "It was the only way I could. Asked to be saved without begging. I'd have untied you anyway. But would I have followed you?" Silence again. But this time, it held warmth. The next morning, the cot was folded up. The rope was gone. Spring thawed the ridge, slow and shy. Temperance stood at the fence line, sleeves rolled, planting potatoes in earth still slick with memory. Ira sharpened. "The plow. Frost might come again," he said. "Then I lay canvas down." Later, a wagon approached. Melba and a younger woman with a child. Melba didn't climb down. "Figured I'd see if you'd gone feral." "Not yet. Got beans and hard bread," Temperance said. Melba handed Ira a tin of lard. "Not charity, just extras. Town's talking," she warned. "More now than before. Pastor says the Lord. Don't abide your shelter." "Eldon Pike's stirring up worse. Eldon's a drunk and a coward," Ira said. Melba gave a snort. "Still, he's loud, and loud fills space where truth can't reach." Temperance stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "Melba, you here to warn me, or just enjoy the view?" "I'm here," Melba said, her voice gentling, "because I remember a girl with dirt on her chin who once gave half her bread to a crying widow." Temperance lowered her gaze. A child in the wagon gave a small wave. She returned it, her lips pressed firm against the stirring in her chest. When the wagon rolled off, the wind passed through the pines again, soft as a hush, and something lifted inside her like pride rising. Steady and quiet, they returned to their work. That evening, Ira sat by the hearth while she mended the cuff of his shirt. The firelight danced across his face, catching in the creases by his eyes, turning him both older and softer all at once. "You think we should marry for real?" she asked without looking up. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "I already live like you're my wife, but the town don't see it that way. They don't feed us, don't warm this house, don't know you like I do." She nodded slowly. "Still, their noise follows me like smoke on old clothes." He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "You want the paper, the ring. I want to stop feeling like I'm being measured every time I walk down a street. Then we'll go to the preacher." Her head snapped up. "You'd do that. I undid your rope, didn't I?" That night, she stood by the window, holding the lavender jar. The darkness outside felt thick. Watching, she whispered a name his and set the jar down. 3 days later, they rode into town. The wind had stilled, but dust trailed their wagon like a quiet memory. Ira wore his best shirt, the one she had stitched. She had braided her hair and pinned it up, not for vanity, but like armor. They entered the church near dusk. The pews sat empty, and the light through the windows painted the floor in gold and blood red. Pastor Ephraim Quaid stood at the altar, collar half undone, his eyes like paper left out in weather too long. He stiffened as soon as he saw them. "We came to marry," Ira said. Quaid's jaw worked before words came. She's a woman of ill rumor. You know what folks say." "I know," Ira said, "and I don't care." Quaid looked at Temperance like she was a splinter embedded in the walls of his chapel. "I cast her out because I believed what I was told." "You were wrong," she said quietly. "But I'm not here for your apology, just your service." He hesitated. "This town won't look kindly on me performing the rite. They never looked kindly on me anyhow." Temperance replied, stepping forward. His hand twitched, then fell to his side. "Fine, bring 2 witnesses. We'll make it official." They left without looking back. At the mercantile, they found 2 old widows playing cards on the porch when asked to witness. Both nodded like they'd been waiting all along. "About time." One of them muttered, "The way you to look at each other could boil beans." Back at the ridge, the preparations were quiet. Temperance cleaned the cabin like it was sacred. Ira shaved. They said little, working in sync, their hands brushing now and then like sunlight catching window sills on the morning of the wedding. She wore the dress she had made from scraps, and memory white linen with blue thread stitched along the cuffs. Ira met her eyes as she stepped onto the porch. The way he looked at her, it wasn't awe, but something steadier, respect. They stood beneath the old pine tree where the wind whispered through the needles. No bells rang. Pastor Quaid recited scripture in a clipped voice. The widows smiled, softly, like they'd seen this story before. Ira took her hand, rough palm to palm. "Do you?" Quaid asked. "Take this woman?" "I do," Ira said. Before the words had even finished, Temperance's voice trembled just once. "I do." There was no kiss, just their hands still clasped and pine needles falling like quiet confetti. They shared bread and broth with the widows. Quaid left without a word. When the women had gone, Ira and Temperance sat on the porch steps, their bare feet touching. "Feels different now," she whispered. "Does it? A little heavier, a little lighter." He reached out, touched her wrist, his thumb brushing the spot where rope had once bit deep. "Then maybe it's real." They watched the stars rise scattered like salt over black velvet. The world still judged, still whispered, but their house stood warm and full of breath. A week later, Ira rode to town alone for supplies. Temperance stayed back, planting early corn. That evening, she saw a figure on horseback near the tree line. Not Ira. She stood tall, hand on her hip. The rider didn't move, just stared. In the morning, she found the rope coiled neatly on her doorstep, fresh plank, tied into a noose. Rain came sudden, uninvited, tearing across the valley like shattered glass. The wind flung branches like warnings. Trees groaned. Soil turned to mush beneath the hooves of two horses climbing the trail. Their riders carried no lanterns, mud-slicked and silent, their faces shadowed beneath rain-soaked hats. They didn't knock. Inside, Temperance lit the lantern against the storm's tantrum. She glanced once at the door. Some animals go quiet when danger nears, and that night, she was stone still. Ira came and soaked from latching the barn doors. His shirt clung to him like skin. She offered a towel. He didn't take it. "Someone's coming," he said. "I know," she replied. "Storm's just their excuse." They waited. The knock, when it came, wasn't asking permission. Ira opened the door, just enough to show he wasn't afraid. Eldon Pike leaned in, shadow-drenched, rain dripping from his hat. Another man stood behind Luther, the stable hand, strong arms, weak spine. "Well," Eldon drawled, lips curling cruel, "the Lord's been busy turning tenant harlots into housewives, sinners into saints." "You lost?" Ira asked, flat as frost. Eldon's eyes flicked past him toward the firelight and Temperance's shadow. "I come to give warning. Town's done tolerating her charity act." "You mean her life," Ira said. "She's a stained colt. A woman like that don't just vanish into good grace. Pastor Quaid married you, but folks remember." Temperance stepped into view. The fire behind her lit her like an icon. Bare feet, braided hair, face calm as candlelight. "I remember what you are too, Eldon," she said softly. "You've got a daughter with my eyes and your wife's silence." Eldon flinched. Luther cleared his throat. "We ain't here for a fight, just to say if she stays, trouble follows." "She stays," Ira said. "And if trouble comes, let it." They left, in the rain, but not without tossing one last word behind. "You'll regret it." Ira shut the door and bolted it, but the echo clung thick as smoke. That night, thunder cracked like rifle fire. Temperance sat by the fire, blanket over her shoulders, watching the noose. It hadn't moved. Ira joined her without speaking. His warmth settled beside hers. "Why won't they let me go?" she whispered. "Because they never learned how to forgive." "You think I'm cursed?" He shook his head. "I think you're proof they were wrong, and folks don't like being wrong." She turned toward him, eyes bright. "If they come back, I'll be between you and whatever comes." The wind moaned outside. In the days that followed, the town grew cold, not in weather, but in manner. The store stopped filling their orders. Mail vanished. The preacher's sermons turned sharp and pointed. Mothers pulled children away. Even Melba stopped visiting. Temperance stitched a red scarf and wore it when they rode into town. She walked taller than usual. Let her silence speak. One day, a boy no older than 8 broke from his mother's grip, handed her a fistful of wildflowers. His mother yanked him away. The petals scattered in the dust. Ira bent, picked them up, placed them gently in the crook of her arm. They didn't speak of it. Tension settled heavy. Ira kept the rifle closer. The barn door stayed barred. Even the chickens grew nervous. Then came the fire. It started at sundown, smoke curling from the hayloft, thick and orange. Temperance screamed first. Ira was already moving. Flames clawed the rafters like they'd been waiting. The cow inside bellowed. Ira ran in, face covered with wet cloth. Temperance followed, grabbed the bucket, hurled water at the base. Sparks caught her sleeve. She smothered them with her apron, coughing, crying. Together, they dragged smoldering hay out, kicked dirt over the flames. The rain came too late. They lay on the ground, coughing. "You all right?" Ira rasped. She nodded. Tears left clean paths. Through soot, burned, not broken. Later, huddled in the kitchen, her arm bandaged. Smoke in every corner, Ira said. Someone poured lamp oil. It wasn't an accident. They wanted to finish what the rope started. He grabbed the noose from the mantel and threw it in the fire. It hissed, curled, turned to ash. That night, she didn't sleep on the bed or cot. She lay beside him, skin to skin, no words, just breath. Next morning, a paper was nailed to the fence. 5 words in slanted ink. Devil's wife, leave or burn. She held it with trembling hands. Ira read it, took it from her, and burned that too. "Ira," she said, voice shaking, "if you hadn't come back for me, I did. But if you hadn't, you'd have saved yourself." She wanted to believe that. By week's end, the barn wall was patched, the roof mended, but their sense of safety remained cracked. One evening, as she gathered eggs, she saw another figure at the tree line, not riding, just standing. She froze. Ira stepped out, rifle slung. "You lost again." The figure vanished. That night, Ira taught her to shoot, not with pride, not with fear, just gentleness. "You don't have to use it," he said. "But if you need to, you will." She nodded. Her hands didn't shake. Later, on the porch, she whispered, "I thought marrying you might make it stop." The judgment. She nodded. He looked at her. "Storms don't ask permission, Temperance. They come. All we do is stand through them. I want to stay. You already did." She closed her eyes. A twig snapped in the woods. This time, Ira rose, reached for the rifle. Because when the storm won't pass, sometimes you walk into it. No knock came. No shouted words. Just fire. Again. Orange flames licking the sky. She smelled it before she saw it. Sharp, oily smoke that didn't belong. She threw open the door. The barn was blazing. Not by chance. Deliberate. Fueled. Chickens screamed. Cow bellowed. Ira ran, rifle across his back. Temperance grabbed the buckets, her hair unbraided, whipping behind her like a flag. And then Eldon stepped out. Gun drawn. "I warned you," he shouted. "Told you what comes of harboring whores and calling them wives." Ira raised the rifle. Steady, aimed low, not to kill. "You lit that fire. No man with a spine would let her stay." Temperance spoke. "You were a boy once. I held you while your mother wept in church. You want your daughter to see your name on a casket." His hand wavered. "Your fire's dying, Eldon. And it ain't the barn, it's your soul." He faltered. Ira fired. One shot. Eldon's pistol flew from his hand, splashing in the mud. He screamed, clutched his wrist, stumbled, ran. No threats, no pride, just his footsteps disappearing. They saved the cow, beat back the flames. By dawn, the fire was done. She turned to Ira, chest heaving. "We're going to keep fighting, aren't we?" "We are. You still glad you undid that rope?" "I didn't undo it," he said. "You did. I just happened to be there when you were ready." The sun crept over the ridge, brushing ash, skin, and something tender between them. That afternoon, they buried what was left of the barn. That night, she brought out the preacher's Bible. Not for prayer, for proof. She opened the front cover, dipped the pen, wrote. Temperance Wade Colch looked at him. "You want to add yours?" He nodded, and beneath her name wrote, Ira James Colt. They stood, hands joined over the open book. "This is the vow that matters," she said. "The one that came after fire, after fear. No paper makes it more true," he said. Then he kissed her slow, steady, a kiss full of knowing, of vows earned. Later, wrapped in a blanket on the porch, the smell of smoke still clinging, they watched stars blink back into the sky. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. She didn't answer for a long time. "No," she said. "I want to grow. Roots, right here, in the ground they tried to burn us out of." He smiled, just barely. "Then we build again." Down the ridge, a figure approached, not a threat. The young boy with the wildflowers, this time with his father, carrying nails and a hammer. Behind them, another wagon. Melba Fay in the seat, with sacks of flour and two hens clucking. Temperance gripped Ira's hand. The world had shifted, and somewhere in the soil, where the ashes still smoked faintly, something new had already begun.